For those who are on YouTube who are watching this later, just a couple of things I want to mention as we're going through this. Um, Let me go ahead and pull up the Blackboard and show you what's different, because this will make a little bit more sense about the updates that I've done for the class. There we go. Okay, so what's going on with the class is you'll notice that if we go into here in the week 13, I've posted the last week's meeting because it was also a discussion about like what was coming up. I've also sent another reminder, just like, hey, here's that class update talking about what the annotated bibliography is. So I've included those as well, just to kind of give a refresher if anybody missed it, or if they just, instead of just having to go jumbling through week 12 to go find it. Everything for the annotated bibliography is ready to go. So if you click on it, it'll go ahead and just send you straight to the Dropbox. So all that's ready to go. And then I've also taken the liberty of also providing a example, which is the same one that I was using in the video. So that'll be something that you can go ahead and see within Blackboard, is that there's going to be this example that'll be posted there. And the way that you can find that is right here in the prompt. It'll say attach files, annotated bibliography example. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed this, but if you actually go right here where it says paper examples, it gives you all of the examples that are there for all of the papers. So if you ever needed something, it's just right here in where it says paper examples. Another couple of things, Presentation Center has changed. So let me go ahead and go into the student view really quick so you can kind of see what this looks like. So if you go into the Presentation Center right now, it'll give you the presentation lecture, which is something that we're going to be talking about. I wanted to bring this up on Thursday as we're talking about what's going on with signups, but this is also like what the itinerary is. There'll be specific dates of when people can sign up, and it's going to be an all-day thing. So it'll be all day Monday, and then it'll be a good chunk of Tuesday and a good chunk of Thursday. So we're looking at like like 5 sessions, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to sign up for space, because it's not just like it's just like the 2 hours that we have here. It's going to be like Monday, it will be all day. So if somebody wants to do Monday, that'll be all day, whereas Tuesday and Thursday will be a little bit tighter. Presentation lectures right here. I've also provided what the grading sheet will look like for the presentation. So everything's transparent about what exactly the presentation is going to be graded on. I provide the actual slides that I give for the presentation, like roadmap definitions, like what each one is supposed to be doing. I go through like speaking tips, things like that. So I go through all of that. And then I provide the presentation template. So there's an actual template that'll get brought up, and then if you open it up, it'll be in a PowerPoint format. I also provide it in an Apple Keynote format. So either one, PowerPoint or Keynote, you can use one or the other. Just if you're using a Mac and you use Keynote for your presentations, I have that right there, so you don't have to convert it from a PowerPoint file, because usually the formatting ends up getting all screwed up. So either way, if you're using a Windows machine, you're probably using PowerPoint, and either one of these will import into Google Slides. I think PowerPoint will import into Google Slides easier. And then this is a great TED Talk about presentations and how to do an effective presentation, and it's called How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint. Highly recommend you look at that. I believe that I will go ahead and post that up as well when we get to the end of when we start week 14. Then, because right now I want everybody to be focusing on the annotated bibliography on Friday and the outline on Tuesday. And so those are going to be the big things that we have. So if we go over here, You'll notice after the annotated bibliography, I have all of this, but then if you go to the next part, outline, I have the outlining lecture already up as well. And then not only do I have that, but if you look at here, that this PowerPoint that I do is right here, this presentation. So you can actually download this PowerPoint in its entirety that's presented in video right here. And that's the PowerPoint file for it. There's also not one, but two examples of an outline that people have done. So you can take a look at like how people have done it. And then I have a second one right here that also, and it's just there, and it's different styles of how people did it. One person did it where it was really kind of spread out and it went over like, 4 or 5 pages. It looks bigger than it is. It's because it's all spread out and it's all, line by line. But usually the outline should run about, just around 2 pages, maybe 3. But you have to think about it like 2 or 3 pages is not too much when you're like writing like a sentence and then hit a line, and then go to the next thing. And then I see you, Freddie, by the way, I'm almost done. And then the other thing that I've also done is I also included the presentation lecture here just for reference so people can start kind of thinking about it. It's helpful to see this more than once because it goes over it. And then these are the fabled how-to guide for the final paper and what the basics are. And then I go through each paragraph by what you should be doing, what are the instructions for each paragraph, what each paragraph should be doing. So I talk about all of it in detail. So it kind of gives you a good overview of what the paper should look like. Now, if you're kind of wondering, looking towards the final paper, you're wondering, well, what does it look like? Well, I have 3 papers, 2 in APA and 1 in Chicago, of some of people's final papers. And so you can actually go take a look at what a final looks like. And I have it in APA and I also have one in Chicago. So either way, that works for you. Then I also have the presentation here. Ignore the dates. All of this stuff is tentative. There are other things like the Dropbox and all that that are invisible to you guys right now, but that's going to be, but those will be updated as we get closer to that. But I just wanted to start putting it up here so you would all be familiar, like, hey, there's a new section, presentation center, and then the final paper center. So all of that will be there. That way it's not stuck in a particular week. You can go straight to presentations and final papers. There'll be a special link for Zoom for the specific presentations. There'll be a link for that posted on there. There'll be all the drop boxes for the presentations, and then also the drop boxes for the rough drafts and finals for the final paper. All of that will be there. So just wanted to get you accustomed to where that is. But going back over to this week, Freddie, you had a question.
Yeah, it was just regarding to the outline and in terms of the final paper as well, I believe, or the presentation. I know when we watched the video last Thursday, it showed on the outline like 2 sides A and B, what they're saying. I know for personally, like for my research from both like the news articles and my journal article, it's only been saying about like why police reform should change and what's wrong with current police reform and like consent decrees and like the whole investigation. So like that's side A. Side B of why it shouldn't change, is that what I'm hearing from like not my research? Is that what just like from talk like on Twitter or like just on ABC News or stuff like that? Or is that coming from my research or that should be coming from my research as well?
Yeah, and this is where we're going to come to, and I'm actually going to have a discussion about, I'm actually going to have a video posted about this pretty soon, as a matter of fact, because usually this is something that I would do. This would be like a discussion that I end up doing with like the whole class about, like, we would bring up your papers and we talk about preponderance of evidence, but we have 2 people in the room. So the idea is with the papers, and this is why you're going to get newspaper articles. This is where we started talking about like editorials being really useful. Because they're going to give different perspectives. Like, for instance, if you were having, like, let's say, a discussion on global warming or climate change, right? And all the evidence is really pointing in one direction, right, scientifically, but there are other people saying like, well, it's about what you're going to hurt the economy, or this isn't real. Like the people who say like it's a hoax, right? Well, there's not a lot of science backing up that it's a hoax, but there's a lot of people saying it, or there's a lot of people saying it's not as big of a deal, or it's not because humans have done it. um there'll be commentaries, there'll be opinions, there'll be like op-eds are going to be really useful for stuff like that. um so if there's any kind of pushback to stuff, but when it comes to reform, police reform, the interesting thing is that you're talking about like police reform and like consent decrees and police, you're talking about as a whole package. Not everybody agrees on the particulars of that package. Not everybody agrees on like what exactly should be in a police reform package. And so instead of just saying like, people should just, keep it the way it is, I mean, that's almost harder to argue than it is to talk about the nuance of it. Because like some people really don't like consent decrees because that's like big government telling the states and localities like how they should be running their police force and not letting the local police force or the state police force or the state government regulate the police office, because consent decrees come straight from the Department of Justice. So that's a federal intervention into a police office and into a police department. And there's some arguments about consent decrees. As a matter of fact, Attorney General Barr in the Trump administration, like basically threw out consent decrees for that very reason. Like that was the argument, was that it was government overreach, not allowing states to be able to basically regulate their own police forces. So consent decrees can be really kind of are actually a really touchy issue depending on who you ask. The other thing too is, all right, like cool, we have like reform in the academy. Well, what does that consist of? Does that mean that we're teaching mental health? Does that mean that there's less time at the range? Does that mean there's equal time in de-escalation? There's a lot of nuance in arguments and discussions about like, well, what kind of package does police reform look like? Does that mean no knock warrants just in general? Because there's a lot of states who still want no knock warrants because they still see the value in the drug war. So instead of just saying like, no, we should just keep it the same way and keep the status quo, that's actually probably harder than just arguing the nuance of it. Because what you could do is, your paper could be like, here's the package of police reforms that people want to do. And then the opposition, the critics of this package criticize consent decrees because of these reasons. Here's the site. People criticize a ban on no knock warrants because of these reasons. Here's the site. And here's the reasons why people would want to pick apart the comprehensive package that you're talking about. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I mean, just from like the short discussion we had, it kind of like when I was thinking about my research, it's like everyone has a different opinion about what police reform could could and should look like. So like newspapers articles, they have a different way of thinking about it. And then my journal article, it's like it like focuses more on like the fundamental laws that go behind the consent decrees, that they go like when it was created and stuff like that, versus with the newspapers, it was more of um community work, like in the community.
Yeah,
And not
community
on the
policing
law.
also,
Yeah,
or also putting people who are like mental health and social workers in tandem with police forces. There's been a
yeah,
couple of places that have done that. I think Rialto has tried doing that. LAPD has started a pilot program. I know they're like my hometown, the city of Whittier, has actually started to bring social workers in, particularly like on 5150 cases, like people who are suicidal or having a mental breakdown, because police aren't necessarily trained for that sort of thing. But there's been so much that has been basically thrown on. Been a lot of baggage that's been thrown on police forces to basically, be a catch-all for basically anything that is an issue in the community, and they're just not trained for that.
yeah.
And nor do they want to be. Like if you ask police forces, they don't want to be a mini DEA, a mini counterterrorism organization, and also like traffic control and just traditional conventional crime investigation as well. It's a lot to ask of just one department.
Yeah, I mean, I think even my research, I mean, they couldn't even imagine the bill that would, like how much money that would cost in training, because they're not, like you said, they're not trained for that. So they would have to train them That's going to be like more money.
Yeah, especially when, you have social workers who are trained to do this stuff already as it is. So, but I hope that gives kind of a better idea as opposed to just like those people are for it and those people are against it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be as black and white. As a matter of fact, that would be even a better paper to talk about the nuances of what a police reform package looks like. That's, grad school level work. And I think that's a really good idea. Yesenia, Nikita, what do you guys think? As we're kind of just talking about this, outlines, annotated bibliographies, getting ourselves kind of ready for the final stretch of the course. Or if you guys have any questions.
I haven't looked into it yet.
Okay, cool. So the thing that I would recommend looking at is definitely because the annotated bibliography is due on Friday. So definitely I would get a leg up on that. And then the thing, oh, thank you, Yesenia. I'm seeing your text. And I would take a look at right here where it says class meetings. Class meeting, we went over that pretty hardcore. And then the class update, I kind of explained like what are we doing for the next week and a half and why, and how it relates to like the rest of the course. So just double check, make sure you go over that material. The annotated bibliography isn't that crazy. It's for those, if you haven't seen it already, it's just a bibliography, but it just has a description of like, well, what was in it. And the questions that I ask you to answer are right here, like, what was the thesis of the argument? If it was a newspaper article, what's the thrust or crux of the story? What evidence is used? How is it found to research? If it's a newspaper article, who was interviewed? What is or are the conclusions? What aspect does this support or critique the controversial topic? So all of those are those could be answered in a sentence or two. You'll get to 50 words pretty quickly. It's 50 to 100 words for each summary. The only thing that I would tell everybody, particularly people watching this on YouTube, later on tonight, is get a leg up on this. This is extraordinarily time consuming. It's not hard, but it will take you a day to do it, like an actual day of work to like get all of this done. But the reason I'm forcing you to do this, a month before your paper is due is because then you don't have to do it while you're trying to write your paper. The biggest downfall that a lot of people have is they're trying to research while they're writing their papers. They're, and that's, you can tell when something's patchworked. So that's why I'm trying to get you into the mode of getting all of this set up first before you actually even start writing the final. So that's why I have you do this. Freddie, go for it.
I noticed on the example you put for the annotated, it doesn't have a hanging indent on the citation. Do you?
Oh, I don't care about any of that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, just journal articles in alphabetical order, newspaper articles in alphabetical order, and this isn't even like the proper format for doing it. It would be just all of the sources in alphabetical order of author. The reason I do it like this is it just makes it easier to grade, because the requirement is five minimum journals, 5 minimum newspaper. And this is just to make sure that I can just meet the requirement without spending half an hour looking at each one of your papers.
Thank you.
So with that, we have about half an hour left. Let me go ahead and do this then. Since for those of you who haven't seen it already, I'm going to go ahead and play the class 12 update just for your reference, and then we can kind of just talk about it on the other side. Since I know, Nikita, you said you had to take a look at it. This is a great opportunity for us to kind of just look at it together, and then we can discuss it on the other side.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I just want to go ahead and go over what we're going to be doing for the remainder of the week. You can all hear and see that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what you'll be going into for next week. So if you go ahead and look at the class calendar, you'll notice that it's already filled in for the remainder of assignments for the rest of the quarter, or for the rest of the term. And so, what we're going to be working on after you turn in your journal article analysis on Sunday is we'll be looking at the annotated bibliography, which will be next Friday. And so, I have an example. This is posted on Blackboard already for you to kind of look at like what would be a reference for what the journal article analysis would look like. Just to keep it in mind, the way that we're working, to look at the assignment flowchart, everything that you've been working on from here on out has been based upon your controversial research topic, be that gun control or Planned Parenthood or the border or immigration or what have you, and so cryptocurrency. So now that we've already done the hot newspaper and you've already contained 3 newspaper sources about that related to the controversial topic, and you've done a journal article analysis, and you've already gotten another 3 journal articles as we were prepping for this upcoming paper that's due on it's due Sunday, you've already amassed about 6 sources so that are related to your controversial topic. So now what we're looking for is 10 sources minimum for the final paper, and you can use the sources that you found from the news workshop and the journal workshop. So this is going to be, so you're not going to have to start from scratch getting 10 sources. I want you to be able to use as many sources as you can that you've already found that are related to your controversial topic, and then just keep finding more of them. So theoretically, if you already found 3 good newspaper sources and 3 good journal article sources, then you really only have to find 4 more sources, 2 more newspapers, 2 more journals at the minimum. Then once we do that, we're going to be working on our annotated bibliography. So what that would be looking at, that would be going ahead and giving a breakdown of the sources that you plan on using for your final paper. And so the assignment intent right here is to complete your research index. So you've already done the research needed for the final. That's the intent. And then we'll go down, and then you'll go ahead and formulate an outline that'll be coming up the following week after that. And then we'll set up our presentations and final. And so that's going to be the next thing that we work on. So when we look at the annotated bibliography, give you an idea of what we're talking about here, is you're going to go ahead and you'll notice that on the prompt for the annotated bibliography, there's a kind of a template of how that looks. And what you'll do is you'll go ahead and put your journal articles first, and you'll put them in the alphabetical order of the authors. And then you'll go ahead and put in the APA or Chicago citation, the full citation, and then you'll give a brief summary of what was covered within that journal article. This is kind of basically creating an index of everything that you're going to be using, and at a certain point it requires you to actually, have gone through and reviewed in some capacity the actual source that you're using. That way you're familiar with it by the time that you're actually starting to use it for the outline and subsequently for your presentation and your final. And so you'll notice with each one of these, it goes into the full citation, and then it gives a brief summary. That it's 50 to 100 words typically, so it's not going to be anything too crazy. And then you'll notice after that, the newspaper articles are included, and then you'll include the full citation, including the URL, the web link for the actual newspaper source, similar to what you did with when you first were looking at those sources and pulling them and giving kind of a description. You can go ahead and use those descriptions that you've already done for your newspaper and journal article analysis. When you did your workshops, you were required to go ahead and give a brief summary of what they are. Feel free to use those. There are some questions that are to be asked about like what was covered and all of that, but that's typically what I asked you beforehand. So just be sure to review that in the prompt. That'll be available on Blackboard. So that would be something that I would encourage you to do. So the last thing that you'll also want to check out, just to kind of give you a better idea of what's going on, is I would encourage you to go ahead and check out Blackboard. And if you check out Blackboard, you'll see that I've put back in the videos, lectures on searching for news articles and research articles, and then also the class calendar is up here ready to go, and it's already been filled out, and it goes through May, including accounting for the week of finals and presentations. We'll be having presentation sign up soon. You'll be seeing something that says Presentation Center included in here, and I'll be sure to point that out via email soon. And then you'll notice that the annotated bibliography prompt is here along with the annotated bibliography example. So if you click on that, that's the actual example paper that I offer for you to kind of have a reference. Be sure when you submit your annotated bibliography, please submit it as a PDF, and also name your file in that order: last name underscore first name, then put AB for annotated bibliography, and then include your section number. And then these are these, be sure to order the citations in alphabetical order by author's name and include the following information in your summary. Each one of these could be like a sentence long. So by the time you're done, you've written, 4 or 5 sentences really, and it reaches the 50 to 100 word form requirement. And then you'll notice that this is what the format should look like. And the example is basically that. That guideline filled out, as you'll notice. And then also I have, just a reminder, the journal article analysis is due by Sunday. So be sure to include be sure to use the Google Drive link to go ahead and drop that off, and please include it as a PDF. Other than that, that's what I have for you. If anything else, please email me or go ahead and see me in office hours. I will be sending out an email later on today. Thank you very much. And I'll Okay, so with that, do I have any kind of clarifying questions? Anything that you want me to kind of elucidate or go into detail on? Or does that seem kind of cut and dry?
Yeah, it was easy to follow.
Cool. Yeah, hopefully that was the goal at least. Cool. So that's what I have for you now. So there's plenty to do. So your annotated bibliography and your outline, the reason why I have you do these kind of right next to each other is because as you're doing your annotated bibliography, you can kind of be formulating your outline as you're going through your annotated bibliography and going through sources. Pick out like quotes or citations or stuff you want to use that you want to stick into your outline, because then that'll just make writing your outline a lot easier. So that'll be really good. And the reason I have you do this, so far ahead of time is, and then I can give you some critiques on like, hey, maybe you should move this in your outline or make some adjustments, or here's some stuff that you're not answering, or here's some stuff that I have some questions on, or here's some stuff you're doing really well. So I want to be able to make sure that I catch that as earlier rather than later. And then same thing with the sources, making sure that all your sources are good. Or if you need, patch things, anything up, or if there's any sources you need to go ahead and like get something else on, or maybe something that's not as applicable, I can catch it early. That way you're not going through the rabbit hole of like starting to write and do stuff for your presentation and then it just not being there. Other thing, speaking of presentation, if you kind of just want to see what it looks like, there are 2 presentations that are available that that people have done. So you can go ahead. These are real. These are ones that people did, I think back in the spring or in the summer. So you can go ahead and actually check these out to get a good idea of just basically how the whole thing is structured. It'd be really useful and really helpful for you to see. And as a second, isn't anybody doing MDMA? Nikita or Yesenia, is one of you doing MDMA as your topic for therapeutic use?
I'm not.
Let's see. Okay. Well, this will be Nick. Is anybody doing DACA? Because Freddie, you're doing police reform. Nikita, what was your topic?
Cybersecurity policy.
Cybersecurity. And Yesenia, yours is. You can put it in the chat. Homelessness. Okay, cool. Just to end the day, just to kind of give you an idea, and then that way people, when they see the video, they can just jump to, you can see this as well. I'm going to show you one of these. You guys want to see MDMA use or you want to see DACA? Got it. All right. Yesenia says DACA, so let's do DACA. So here, check this out. This is only 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so my presentation is on the reauthorization of deferred actions for childhood arrivals, also known as DACA, and my name is Wendy Morales. Okay, so just a roadmap, basically how I'm going to go ahead and introduce everything. So first, I'm going to start by introducing DACA, and then give you a better idea why I stand by that program. And then I'll define some of the keywords so that way you have an idea of exactly what I'm talking about as I go through all of the different information. And then I'll give historical context on some of the immigration policies throughout time leading up to the DACA program. And then give you an insight on a couple of reasons why some are for and against DACA. And then give you concrete information on the program as supporting, the for and against. And then finally, I'll give you my final evaluation / critique. Okay, so for starters, in the intro so basically DACA was started in 2012. It is a branch off of the Dreamers Act, but I'll go ahead and speak about that a little later. But like I said, to start on DACA, the Obama administration had started the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which basically prevents undocumented immigrants that came to the U.S. as children from deportation. And then just a little fact, as of September 30th, 2019, there was 652,000, well, maybe I would say maybe like 653,000 active DACA recipients. And then basically the benefits that you get from the DACA program, basically it's relief from deportation, so you don't have to worry about being deported. Like I said, if you're undocumented, you get renewable work permits, so that allows you to work. Just because, as you know, in order to work in the U.S., you do have to have a social security number, and this also grants you a temporary social security number. And then because of this program, it gave undocumented immigrants new jobs, higher earnings, driver's license, healthcare, and banking opportunities. And then not everybody was able to get into DACA because there are requirements. So basically, to be able to be in the program, you have to have arrived in the U.S. before the age of 16 years old and have proof that you're already here, and be younger than 31 years of age before August 15, 2012. And you have resided in the U.S. for 5 consecutive years. So basically, like, no going back and forth where you go back to your country and then come back here. And so you would have to have been here consistently. And you have to have attended high school or a GED program and received your diploma or equivalent. So basically also like your GED. And what a lot of people don't know is that you have to pay a $465 fee every 2 years for the program renewal in order to keep working. And in September 2017, the Trump administration had announced the termination of the DACA program, which is currently it's up in the Supreme Court currently. We'll find out more about the program and if it'll continue in July 2020, which would be next month in July. Okay, so my declared position is in favor for the DACA program, just because as parents, we want a better future for our children. Thus, that's how basically the American dream even started here in the U.S. It was long before DACA. It's been since this country started. We've seen that many immigrants that came here for better opportunities, not just for their kids but for themselves. And also DACA recipients came to the U.S. as children, and the U.S. is all they know. So basically, if you see in the diagrams that I have here to the right, you see that in the first diagram up top, it says years in the United States for DACA recipients. So basically, if you see in the first column, it says 19.45% have been in the U.S. for 10 to 14 years. And then from there, I mean, it jumps high. It's like double. So there are recipients that have been here for 15 and 19 years, and then another 40% of that have been here for 20 or more years. And that's basically like the whole lifetime. If you look below, these are the age groups, basically of all the recipients. So, you know, you have here, for instance, you have the age group, the 21 to 25, and that's mainly like most of DACA recipients. So if you really combine that, let's say with the 20 years or more that they've been here, you would see that they've been here when they were like 1 to 2 years old, 3 years old. So um, if you were to ask me, like for example, it's like me saying I was born in you know, in Fontana or San Bernardino, but I've never returned, and I'm, you know, I'm from Rialto now, and this is all I know. So really, Rialto is my home. It's not San Bernardino. It's not Fontana. And so basically, the terminating the DACA program would mean the deportation of young adults, like I said, that have been here for, you know, the majority of 20 or more years. And some definitions that you should keep in mind as I'm going through. So basically, like I stated before, DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is an immigration policy enacted by the Obama administration. Um, and then I also put the American Dream, just, you know, I mean, everybody's American Dream definition is different. But I would say that, well, the actual definition would be is the belief that anyone, regardless of where they were born or what class they were born into, can attain their own version of success in a society where upward mobility is possible for everyone, which is really what everybody wants. And then just so you kind of get an idea of who's in the presidential administration, just to name a couple of people, it would be like who the president appoints, which would be like the vice president, secretary, treasury, defense, and so on. And so basically, reinstatement and reauthorization would mean just to renew the program. And then amnesty, I will be speaking about that in a little bit, which is an official pardon for people who have convicted of political offenses. So basically, in other words, what they would say is coming into this country illegally. And then immigration, you know, moving from one country to another permanently. And then citizenship is becoming just a citizen of that country. And then a DACA recipient, which recipient would be a person or thing that receives or is awarded something. Okay, so a little bit of the history. Uh, so like I
This is
said,
awesome, by the way.
DACA is not the first program that, you know, that has worked towards like immigration policies. It actually has started even way before. I mean, there's some information that I had seen from the 1800s, but just to kind of keep it up to date, I started in the 1950s, which started with the Bracero program, which was created in 1942. Basically, it was during like World War II when they felt like uh, there was going to be like labor shortages and nobody was going to be able to, you know, work in agriculture. So they brought in, you know, recipients from Mexico. And then, and then I've said this in the class before, just a fun fact, my grandpa was a part of that Bracero program. And then in the 1980s, the Immigration Reform and Control Act provided amnesty to aliens who had completed one of the two stipulations. They had resided continually in the US since January 1982, or they had completed 90 days of agricultural work between May 1985 and May 1986. And then another fun fact, that's actually how my mom became a citizen here in the US. Um, and then 1990s, there's a couple here, which is illegal immigrant reform and immigrant responsibility act. Basically, this was just okay. They see more people coming into the U.S., more immigration, so now they have to hire more border patrol, you know, build a wall and so on. And then it led into the Nicaraguan Adjustment and Central American Relief Act, which gave legal status to approximately 1 million illegal aliens, mostly from Central America, who had lived in the US since 1995. And since they said, you know, Haitians said that's not fair, you know, what about us? So they created the Haitian Refugee Immigration and Fairness Act. And then fast forward 2000s, that's when the Legal Immigration Family Equity Act, also known as LIFE, which is a mini amnesty aimed to those illegal aliens who hope to become green card holders through marriage, employment, or other categories. So basically, there's a line of people who are trying to become, citizens here in the U.S. And the line is really long. Like they're still working on paperwork from the 1990s, early 2000s, and that's the line. So in order to basically, I guess, jump the line, you could do that by marrying, someone who is a U.S. citizen. And then, okay, so now current, this would be like the current historical context, which would be, so basically DACA, it was birthed by the Dreamers Act, which is the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors Act. Um, it was first introduced in Congress in 2001 in order to provide a pathway to citizenship to certain undocumented immigrants who migrated as children, which, like I said, this is what birthed DACA, except for the Dreamers Act was denied, but it was basically, like I said, rewritten and then revived by the Obama administration, which, like I said, would be DACA. And then, okay, so then opposed citizenship should be offered to lawbreakers, shouldn't be offered to lawbreakers. Um, Basically, what they're saying is you broke the law. I'm sorry, we can't help you. And then oppose would be enforcement of immigration laws. So basically, they're also saying like, okay, if we let this slide, we're gonna basically let everything slide. Like everybody's gonna try to come to the U.S. and that's what they don't want. And also, it allows presidents to have a higher power in the legislative branch. So basically, they're saying that the DACA program is unconstitutional, and if it is reinstated, it's basically saying, okay, all presidents have a higher power that they can do whatever they want if we let this slide for the Obama administration. And then those in favor, deporting, dreamers is inhumane and cruel. I mean, you're taking away um, people from their homes. Like I said, they didn't just come here. They didn't just come here yesterday.
Keep
They've
going.
been in the U.S. since they were children. And then it's also good for the U.S. economy. And then DACA recipients are vital to American workforce and society. Okay, and then some supporting evidence. Um, as mentioned before, deporting dreamers is inhumane. Like I said, the median age group that came here would be like 6 years old to the most common age was 3. So this is their home. And then you can also guess too, like, okay, they've been here for so long that is, if you look to the diagram on your right, you see that 71% speak the English very well or only English. So imagine being sent back to your country and you have no idea what they're saying. You don't even know your family there, or you don't even have family there. Um, and like I said, it's good for the U.S. economy. So the Center for American Progress stated DACA has been reservedly good for the U.S. economy. So basically, they contribute 460.3 billion to the U.S. gross to the GDP over the next decade. So that's a lot of money that the U.S. can use. For, like I said, they pay taxes. They're no different than citizens here in the U.S. And DACA recipients are vital to the American workforce and society. It's stated by Senator Dick Durbin. He said 900 of them are members of the U.S. military. 20,000 of them are school teachers, and not to mention, I didn't even put how many work in the actual medical field. So imagine, um, just imagine having everybody deported. I mean, what if that was your favorite teacher, your professor that you're no longer gonna have? And then my evaluation critique after um, getting to know or learning more about the DACA program. As far as the DACA program, I feel like it should be reformed because basically the DACA program doesn't have like a straight path for citizenship. For instance, it's not saying like, okay, you're a good citizen, you're going to school, you have your GED, you've been here since you were a child, um, you can become a citizen. This is what you would have to do. It has nothing like that. I feel like that should be reformed, and that way they can become a part of the U.S. and not have to worry about, relying on a program that they have to renew every 2 years. And then overall, I feel like it is time the U.S. creates an Immigration Reform Act that sets better guidelines to becoming a U.S. citizen than the current regulations. Like I said, you've seen all those different policies that I had spoke about. But I feel like there should be a better, basically like better requirements as to how you can become a U.S. citizen. That way, I know it's not going, like, immigration's gonna stop completely because that's impossible. But I feel like if there was something that basically would be easier for people to come into the U.S., that it would, drop that number very low. And like they say, why, instead of working with the enemy, instead of working against the enemy, why not work with them? So I feel like, why not work with immigrants instead of against them? But so that's the end of my presentation.
Cool. So what do you guys think? It's a nice way to get started. You don't have to invest too much into that. I just kind of wanted to expose you to it. And there'll be more as we go along. Particularly, go ahead and watch the presentation lecture. That'll explain a lot more and give you a lot more context as to what's going on. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and we'll end it here for the day. We're about 4:50. And other than that, I will see you guys on Thursday.